happy Monday. Nice to have you here. Did you hear the one about the hotel room that was filled with lube and money and drugs? All while a guy named Sean Puffy Combs was supposedly negotiating his surrender to the feds. I know. I couldn't believe it either. But we got photos today of said hotel room artifacts. And this is what the feds found in Diddy's room. Again, I can't stress it enough. At the same time, he is negotiating his surrender to the feds on sex trafficking and racketeering. I don't get it. I don't know if he got it. I think the jury might get it because those photos were really, really profound today. And you know what else was really profound? Photos of his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, black and blue, beaten to a pulp, fat lip, cut eyebrow, bruised stomach, bruised back, the kind of thing that, you know, it doesn't matter what you think, it's just bad. Beating up women, it's bad. And we saw it on tape, and Diddy admitted to it on social media. So it's kind of hard to say he didn't do it. Does it mean he's guilty of racketeering and sex trafficking? That's another matter. We're going to talk about it with Joe Tacopina tonight, which I can't wait. Also, one more just got picked off down in New Orleans. Did you also hear the one? Yeah, you can run, but you can't hide is kind of the moral of the story tonight. If you saw the video on Friday night of all those inmates running from a jail, you know, just cutting the hole through the toilet and running off the loading dock. It was nutty. Like, you know, nobody was watching. And so 10 guys were just able to hightail it out of there. By Friday night, they caught 3 of them. And then by tonight, just a couple hours ago, they caught a 4th. And these are guys that have some serious history. You know, like lots of them have murders. They're not just, you know, in there for small-time stuff. So here's the thing. If you want to be a part of this, you could make $120,000. I'm not kidding. $120,000 on the line for anybody who helps get those last 6 guys. Also, there is this very strange trend. It's only 2 people at this point, but it's very similar. Social media influencers who are young and beautiful and live streaming, suddenly dead at the hands of a hitman. These 2, all within a week of each other. One of them was actually live on the air when she was shot dead. I'm going to take you to that story, tell you who they are, and tell you what we know about the hitman that pulled this off, and whether they might be related, even though they're not from the same countries. Let's start here, though. I have been to a lot of places, and I could give a TED Talk on how to pack for just about anywhere, anytime, for any reason. But you don't have to have a passport like mine to know that maybe when you fly across the country and check into a hotel where you expect to negotiate your surrender for alleged sex crimes, maybe you leave the drugs and the lube and the wads of cash at home. Definitely not wise to leave them scattered around the hotel room so that, you know, the feds don't even have to look very hard. But Sean Diddy Combs clearly thought differently. His hotel room looked like a freak-off waiting to happen when the feds say they came knocking with the handcuffs. Today, we were treated to the photos of all that freaky stuff found in the hotel room. The same hotel where the feds surprised him by arresting him before he had the chance to surrender. You remember we were all really surprised? They were negotiating, he was going to show up, and then boom, they showed up. Grabbed him right there in Manhattan at a fancy hotel. And this is what was in the room, they say. They showed the photos. They gave them to us publicly today. The prosecutors in his sex trafficking trial decided to release this evidence to the public. But why does it matter? Diddy is not charged with buying too much baby oil. He's not even charged with domestic assault, the stuff that we clearly saw on video in that hotel hallway. He's charged with running a criminal enterprise and crossing almost every line that you can think of, including state lines. He's also charged with using his staff to help him carry out and cover up his crimes. And those aren't the only photos that came out today. We're also seeing the images of Cassie Ventura's injuries, allegedly inflicted by Diddy and described on the stand by Cassie last week. So warning, This is difficult if you know someone or if you've been involved in domestic abuse. This is probably a tricky thing to watch, so fair warning. The photos appear to show bruising on Cassie's thigh and her back. There's a bloody gash right into her eyebrow. One shot is digitized, another one isn't. The eyebrow is also very swollen, you can see there. Cassie took 3 selfies in an Uber after leaving Los Angeles' Intercontinental Hotel in 2016, the night of that horrible hallway attack, the one where Combs is seen on camera beating Cassie senseless. There she is with the fat lip, putting the sunglasses on to cover the eye. Then there's this picture of a chef's knife jammed into a door handle. Cassie said that she used that as protection when Diddy showed up at her apartment unannounced. The idea here is that she could jam the door with the knife, but then she'd also have a weapon right there at the very moment that she might need it. And tonight we heard that Cassie wasn't the only one dealing with these god-awful stories. Carrie Morgan was Cassie's best friend, 17 years worth of being best friend. Now she's a former best friend, and Carrie said she witnessed Cassie being attacked by Diddy on 2 separate occasions. After the hotel attack, Carrie Morgan said that Diddy tried to break down Cassie's front door using a hammer. She says that she told Cassie she needs to leave Diddy, but that the response was, "It's impossible." She said Cassie told her Diddy controlled every aspect of her life, from her job to her apartment to her whole career and her future. That best friend told the jury that things went south in their friendship after Diddy turned his attention to her. She told the jury that Diddy actually beat her and choked her, Carrie Morgan, while trying to find out if Cassie was cheating on him. Carrie said that Diddy hurled a wooden coat hanger at her and that it gave her a concussion, and then paid her $30,000 to stay quiet. I'm going to go now to NewsNation's national correspondent, Caitlin Becker. She's at the courthouse in Lower Manhattan. Caitlin, this is just like a parade of horribles, you know? We had Dawn Richard on the stand talking about witnessing a lot of abuse and actually being abused herself. Carrie Morgan. It just seems like it's just one after the other. But I'm sort of wondering if Sean Combs is making any headway, because his very expensive attorneys get to cross-examine all of them.
They do, and I think we saw a bit of that today. 2 very different witnesses, 2 very different witness experiences. The defense attorneys cross-examining Dawn Richard this morning. Remember, that is someone who was a member of Danity Kane, making the band, who has made similar accusations against Diddy. They really eviscerated her credibility on cross-examination. They did a great job of making her look like she just simply had an axe to grind and was kind of going to back up Cassie no matter what. They pointed out several inaccuracies in what she testified to on direct examination and things she had told the government in interviews prior to that. So it just didn't look great. And it seemed like Diddy himself knew that it was going to be a check in his column, in the defense column, because he was engaged, leaning forward, and seemed, I don't want to say, you don't want to say happy, because that he wasn't cracking a smile or anything, but definitely wasn't kind of that pushed back sort of annoyed look that we've seen from him at times. So when Carrie Morgan got on the stand, she had to do some heavy lifting for the government, and I think she did. She's a reluctant witness. She was subpoenaed to be there. She said she did not want to testify. She wanted to leave all of this behind her. And she got into some of the really violent aspects of the relationship between Combs and Cassie. Carrie Morgan had a front row seat to all of that. That was her best friend for years and years and years. And as you said, it was that 2018 alleged attack on Morgan that led to the falling out between she and Cassie. And something the defense wanted to get across, because you pointed this out a second ago when you were talking about the government really needs to prove this criminal enterprise and that the people working for Diddy were working to cover up and to facilitate these things. That $30,000 payment that she accepted to say that she wasn't going to sue, she wasn't going to police, she was signing an NDA. The defense tried to say, you got that from Cassie. That was Cassie's money going to you. And she said no. Cassie was the intermediary, but that money, from what she understood, came from Diddy. So that's how we ended there, Ashleigh.
So then, you know, there's a personal assistant who took the stand as well. I think his name was David James. And a personal assistant, you know, has the window to all the secret stuff. How damaging was David James, Diddy's personal assistant, to this case?
was a weird testimony, Ashleigh. I have to be honest. We're only on direct examination, and David James cried an awful lot. They didn't get into very sensitive testimony with James. I mean, considering what we heard from Kerry Morgan and from Cassie and from Don Richard, you expected a lot of tears there. But David James is the one who broke down a few times on direct examination. But from what I gleaned from that, he also said he was a reluctant witness, that he was subpoenaed, that he didn't want to be there. And there was an acknowledgement between him and Diddy when he walked into the courtroom today before he took the stand. So it did seem like he was admitting things that he knew may hurt someone that he still seems to have some respect and admiration for, because he did kind of break down in tears at one point because he was saying that Cassie had said to him that she couldn't get out of it. She couldn't get out of it. And that is a refrain that we keep seeing the government want their witnesses to repeat here, Ash.
Well, you know, as a personal assistant, there'll be a digital trail. So when you're up on the stand, you can't perjure yourself. So let's see where that goes, because he may just have to spit out ugly details that perhaps he would have preferred stay quiet. Who knows? I keep waiting for the escorts, you know, especially the one I keep wondering if we're going to ever meet Jules from the Intercontinental Hotel, the person who was in the hotel room out of sight, out of that beating in the hallway. But there's a guy coming up this week called the Punisher. Do we have any idea what he will lend to the prosecutors?
Well, from what we understand, Ash, the Punisher, which is the moniker he goes by professionally and on social media, the Punisher does what the Punisher sounds like. It seems like he does some sort of S&M, BDSM stuff there. And from what we understand, from what Cassie testified to, that was one of the male escorts that she participated in a freak-off with. So he is expected to be called to the stand tomorrow. And what a juxtaposition we're going to get. We're going to be seeing the Punisher testifying to what it was like to be a part of these freak-offs, as well as Cassie Ventura's mother taking the stand tomorrow. But we're going to kick things off in the morning with David James back on direct with the government for about an hour before cross. And then I think things are really going to heat up, because we've got Cassie's mom coming up there to testify to what she knows about their relationship, and then the Punisher.
You just painted that picture, like how embarrassing and awkward and uncomfortable for everybody in that courtroom. I mean, Cassie's mom following the S&M guy who Cassie said was hired to do all these things to her on video. Well, you'll have to give us a full report on that tomorrow. Sure appreciate it. Thanks so much, Caitlin. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ash.
Okay. This is a good time to run all of this by one of the best legal minds in the business. Joe Tacopina is a criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, friend of the show. Okay, Joe, I could not get over the fact that the feds are negotiating with Diddy's lawyers on a surrender in Manhattan. He comes to Manhattan, he gets his hotel room, and he stocks the dang hotel room with lube and baby oil and drugs and wads of cash. What the hell was he thinking?
Clearly, he wasn't thinking. But, Ashleigh, all of that's really nice. That doesn't do anything to advance the charges in this case. I mean, you're right. It's like, what are you thinking? I thought maybe he was thinking he was going to be able to work out a surrender. As a matter of fact, I know, in fact, he thought he was going to be able to work out a walk-in surrender at the FBI office. And, you know, I guess so his hotel room was going to be his hotel room to do whatever he likes to do in it. And so maybe he had all his paraphernalia and equipment ready to go. I think that's what he was thinking. It didn't work out that way. But again, at the end of the day, great. They have these pictures that make him look even more, you know, off than, you know, we already knew he was, or, you know, he does his own thing, clearly. Does that make him guilty of racketeering? Does that make him guilty of sex trafficking? Does that advance the ball on the Mann Act? It does not. It does not. And so there's been a lot of evidence in this case, really horrible evidence about him as a batterer, as not a nice human being. And that's great. But you know what? I think the government is still reeling from Tenny Garagos' opening statement. I think she did a great opening statement, because I think what she did was I think the government really thought that they were going to run away from him being a batterer. And they embraced him being a batterer. And when I say embraced, I didn't mean it endorsed it, but accepted it. Look, they said this is a case that you're going to see some horrific things that our client did. And they didn't make him look like he was a good guy. They said he did some horrific things, and that was important for them to do because that is to take the blunt out of the government's case.
So here's what I see if I'm just the 13th juror out here, okay?
Yeah.
I see a pattern of behavior that is being repeated over and over and over with every single witness, whereby the guy at the top of the enterprise uses all of his staff to lube up hotel rooms, to hire prostitutes, to buy them tickets, to fly them Mann Act style over state lines. That's sex trafficking. I see bribery. Hey, take this stack of money and make sure nobody sees the video of me beating up my girlfriend. That's bribery. I see extortion. Hey, shut up or your career's over. Hey, shut up or you go, snitches get stitches. Those are all the predicate acts for, say it with me, racketeering. Why are you not seeing that?
They have to prove an enterprise, Ashleigh. They must prove an enterprise. Those are all bad acts, no question. But they need to prove an enterprise.
They're all his staff.
And his staff is not an enterprise. Then anyone is a racketeering enterprise. So all my staff, anything, if I did something wrong, I become a racketeering enterprise because I have staff, right? So if someone has their staff aid and abet them doing something, that makes them a racketeering enterprise. Negative does not. That's not the way
I'm sorry, I'm going to argue with you. I am going to argue with you.
This is the first racketeering case of this kind on the books, period, end of story.
It doesn't mean that sex isn't as bad, like sex trafficking isn't as bad as what the mob was doing by intimidating people into shutting up so that they could carry on their criminal enterprise.
Sex trafficking, I think, is worse than what the mob's doing. What, get loan sharking or gambling or
killing,
garbage,
killing and chopping people's pieces off. But let me just put it this way.
That's the old mob. But putting it aside,
I feel like
it's horrific. I don't see evidence of sex trafficking. Sex trafficking? Trafficking people for sex? What are you talking about?
So Joe, the way it works, you buy a ticket to fly a prostitute into wherever they flew to because they flew all over the world and they flew across the states. That is sex trafficking 100%.
No, it's not sex trafficking, Ashleigh. That's the violation of the Mann Act.
It's illegal prostitution across... But the prosecutor said in her opening statement.
That's not sex trafficking. That is not sex trafficking. Sex trafficking has to be without consent.
Okay, but it's using your staff to buy the tickets to arrange it and bring them in. That's Mann Act and using your staff to do it.
That's Mann Act if it's accepted. That's not sex trafficking. Sex trafficking has to be without consent. I've said to you from the day one we ever talked about this, this case will all boil down to the issue of consent.
Cassie has said...
And I'm sorry.
Cassie has said...
When Cassie Ventura testified that the first time she brought this up was to a lawyer to get money, and, I'm sorry, you get the question, women who say, I never went to the police. I want to justify. I never went to the police. I asked for $30 million for a book manuscript. When that didn't work out, I said, I want $20 million for a lawsuit. I filed the lawsuit, and I have text messages that are completely inconsistent with my on-trial testimony. I'm sorry. It's a good point,
but I do think, Joey Tack, I do think in this day and age, we now understand domestic abuse way more. Why wives have stayed for 30 years with husbands that beat them senseless. We know it. So what I'm saying, hold it, wait, I'm not finished my thought. And that is that it could very well have been that she was taken against her will across state lines to be sex trafficked because she did not want to be in that freak off. She was running from that damn hotel room. So I think there are ways they could easily prove sex trafficking. She was not into it all the time.
Not into it all the time. Sometimes she set up the freak off. Sometimes without even him asking.
Sometimes yes. Sometimes yes, but not always.
How does the jury decide?
Well, when you're bruised and you have a fat lip and you're choking on urine, that's how you decide. You're bruised, you have a fat lip, you're beaten in the hotel hallway.
He's guilty of domestic violence, but that's not a federal crime. That videotape is a horrific, gross tape, and that is why they keep showing it to the jury. But that's not evidence of sex trafficking. It's not evidence of racketeering.
Okay.
It's evidence of nothing but a horrific human being doing something horrible to a woman. Period.
And the bribery to shut everybody up about it. Here, take the money and keep this quiet. I see all sorts of predicate acts. But Joe, you got to come back. I'm beyond my time limit. The producer's mad at me, but you know how much I love you. So come back again.
Okay. Yes. Bye.
Thanks, Joe. Joe Tacopina joining us again tonight. All right, coming up, the cost of helping an escaped prisoner survive on the run can be steep, as in very, very steep. But so can the payday for turning said fugitives in. And in the case of that mass breakout from a dysfunctional jail in New Orleans on Friday night, it is a new payday times 7. Wait until you hear how much money you can make if you pitch in and help find those fugitives. Plus, breaking news, it is a bad night for one of those guys in that jumping brigade. Tell you which one and what happened next. Breaking news tonight out of New Orleans, they got another one. So that means 4 down and 6 more to go. And the latest escaped inmate to be caught from that jaw-dropping jailbreak on Thursday is 21-year-old Gary Price, hauled in just a couple of hours ago. What a future he has in store for him at 21. Tonight, Mr. Price is back in custody, and if the governor gets his way, Mr. Price will be transported to some other jail that's a lot more secure than the Orleans Parish Justice Center, where the 10 inmates pulled off that escape. We're coming up on 4 days since the group slipped through a hole behind the toilet and made a break for it. And for 6 of the 10 who escaped, it seems the risk may be worth it because they're still out there. They're still out there tonight on the loose. And if you ask the marshals tracking them, though, their days are numbered. As we told you on Friday, these are not exactly shoplifters and jaywalkers. 4 of the 6 who are still on the run are charged with or convicted of murder. So yeah, the stakes are high for the marshals and for the rest of us that they find these guys. And we also told you about the faulty locks, the faulty doors, the faulty cameras at that jail. The sheriff confirmed as much herself. The working theory is that staff members may have actually aided in the escape. And now Louisiana's governor wants the state attorney general to investigate the colossal fail and wants every one of the jail's almost 1,400 inmates moved somewhere else. As for the ones who got away, anybody who helps the police find them now stands to collect $20,000 per fugitive. That is amazing. I mean, 10 grand from the FBI, 5,000 from the ATF, another 5,000 from Crime Stoppers per inmate. NewsNation correspondent Mills Hayes is live in New Orleans right now with the latest on the search. Mills, so the Gary Price capture, what do you know about where they got him, what happened, and whether maybe there were others who might be nearby him?
Right. Well, good evening to you, Ashley. We weren't sure if we were going to get any updates in this manhunt today, but we did get a response from Louisiana State Police saying that they did capture a 4th inmate, Gary Price, 21 years old. He's been charged with a first-degree attempted murder, domestic abuse, as well as aggravated assault. And Louisiana State Police tell me that he was found less than 20 minutes northeast of the city, and local media reports are saying that he was actually found in a home, Ashley.
So it looks like you're in the French Quarter, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm so curious about the public and whether people are scared because these are hardened criminals that are out and they're desperate. They don't want to go back.
Right. Well, if you look around, you would never know that there are more than 200 officers that are searching for those 6 remaining inmates. But we did speak with people who live here, and they tell us that they're frustrated. But it's really the city leaders that keep pointing fingers at each other. Now, the district attorney, Jason Williams, he did say today that he was personally afraid for himself, but also for 2 of his lawyers that helped convict one of those escaped inmates. He says that those 2 lawyers took their families, got out of town because they were nervous about retaliation or anything like that. But as you can see around me here on Bourbon Street, it really is just a normal Monday night.
It's unbelievable. It just looks like, yeah, there's a guy who was leaping behind you almost for joy. I don't know. I want to ask our control room if they might have some of those interviews that we might be able to play, because I know Mills was busy all day collecting some of it. Mills, I want to run some of the stuff that you collected today, some of the people you talked to, because I was just fascinated to hear what they said. Okay, let's roll it.
This news broke as we were arriving, so as I was getting to the hotel, I was getting texts from different people like, did you see what's happening where you're going right now? So, yeah, just was a little bit concerned at first, but haven't really heard anything too crazy over where we are, because I guess probably they're moving away from the area.
I haven't been really overly concerned about it. I haven't seen a lot of fear. I mean, someone I know looked it up. They say it's not like they're out to get us.
Those are some tough New Orleaners, if that's the right noun. So, quick question. The governor is suggesting that all of the inmates from that institution be moved. If that institution is crowded, doesn't that mean there's not a lot of space around the system? Where on earth would you put them?
Right. Well, that audit is going to review their basic jail guidelines. And as you said, it's going to remove all of the Department of Correction inmates. So a little bit different. It's going to be the state ones. And he also says that he's called on the Inspector General to make sure that there's an inventory list of all of the detainees within the Orleans Justice Center who have not gone to trial and who have not been sentenced. And there's been some back and forth, some finger pointing between the DA, Jason Williams, and the governor about why it's been taking so long for a lot of these cases to get through as well, Ashleigh.
Yeah, I heard that that's part of the problem, is that a lot of these guys have been in there for several years awaiting their actual trials. And so maybe that's why they were sort of able to hatch plans. You get enough time with your crew. The other thing is, I heard that these pods have, over 10 people in them, and that they were never designed to have that many people. I'm not going to ask you to do the math, because there's a lot of math that comes into this problem, Mills, but it sounded as though there might have been like one person watching over 100 at times. It just seemed, well, look at the picture. This guy is hauling on this door. I timed it. It was for well over a minute and a half, putting his foot up and yanking and pulling on that locked door. Other inmates popped by to give him a hand, and nobody seemed to notice this or hear this, which tells me that there are barely any guards looking at these guys.
Right. Well, when that escape happened, it happened between midnight and 1 o'clock. And the sheriff says that there was one civilian sheriff officer that was supposed to be watching those security cameras. But then when that escape happened, that employee actually went to go and grab food. The DA says that obviously this is absurd. It should have never happened, because these security cameras should be monitored 24/7. The sheriff says that they're only 60% staffed. And of course, they are overcrowded. And she says that this would not have been able to happen without help from within her own department. And so that's why there's 3 sheriff employees that are suspended right now without pay until this investigation is over.
I remember just watching with awe as I saw these 2 inmates just hauling on the lock, and eventually it worked. They got what they wanted. Mills Hayes, great work down there. Thanks for staying up late. Really appreciate it.
Of course.
Mills doing the work for us tonight. She's been up since like 4 o'clock this morning. Okay, so I also am going to put to work Robert Almonte. He's a former U.S. Marshal and retired Deputy Chief of the El Paso Police Department in Texas. Thank you so much, Robert, for joining me. So the big question I have is, you got 7, well, there were 7, now 6 guys still out on the run. Something like 200 officers trying to track them. How do you divide and conquer? How do you prioritize? What do you think is happening on the ground right now?
Well, I can tell you what's happening on the ground, and the United States Marshal Service is one of the agencies taking the lead in apprehending these dangerous, extremely dangerous subjects. So I can tell you that they're pursuing all avenues. They're researching their associates, their families. They're checking all the locations that they may have ties to. I can tell you they're checking the hotels and motels in the areas there, abandoned buildings. They're doing as much as they can. They're using technology, trying to tie loose ends, communication between these subjects and family members, and maybe some of the jail personnel that may have been involved in assisting these extremely dangerous inmates to escape. So there's a lot going on. Now, you say 200 officers actively. Yeah, there's 200 officers that are actively looking for them. But I got to tell you, these alerts have been pushed out to every law enforcement agency there in the area. So you got a lot more than 200 officers that are on the lookout for these dangerous people. And I feel confident it's just a matter of time that they're going to apprehend them. Now, I'm hoping that they apprehend them before these guys hurt somebody or kill somebody by going after them, retaliating against witnesses or the prosecutors. So that's always a concern. But I got to tell you, it's just an enormous failure of security at the jail, just ridiculous. And these cameras should be monitored 24 hours.
you would think, we just assume out here in La La Land that they are monitored. And clearly with the video of them jumping off the loading dock, nobody just happened to see 10 guys in orange and white running and leaping for their lives. No, nobody noticed it. And then they were gone for 7+ hours before anybody. I did notice they had a blanket, and I was told that they used that blanket to put it up over the razor wire so that they could easily get up over the razor wire without too much injury. Just a quick question about the danger level of these guys. Obviously, if some of them go back, they're never getting out again. I mean, murder, they're never getting out again. And so the desperation level of keeping on the run sort of supersedes the safety of anybody who gets in their way. They also need money, they need weapons, they need vehicles. And so, like, the fear, anybody in their path who could be a target, would they even bother with the retaliation part? I mean, these guys really need to focus on the prize, which is freedom, as opposed to focus on the retaliation. Should those people really be worried, the prosecutors and any of the witnesses who put them away?
Yeah, well, they have to be concerned. There's no doubt about it, because as you mentioned, these guys have nothing to lose. Also, they escape. They have nothing to lose. And maybe it'd be a form of self-satisfaction for them to get revenge and go after people that were involved in putting them behind bars in the first place. So yeah, there should be some concern, but everybody in that area, they should have their doors locked. I'm talking about the people in the area there. They should have their doors locked, monitoring the camera, don't answer the door for anybody. They see something suspicious, call the police immediately. So yeah, there should be concern, not just for the witnesses and prosecutors, but for anybody and everybody in the community.
I'll say. I mean, there's going to be a lot of potential forced harboring as well. You know, they could take hostages and say, feed me, clothe me, hide me for the next month until things are quiet. And who knows if that's happening, you know, right now. Robert Almonte, thank you so much for your expertise. We'll probably be calling you again until these guys are all caught, all the next 6 of them. Thanks for this.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Have a good night.
You too. Coming up next, the devil is in the details, which is why in the Karen Reed case, you gotta pay attention because you might miss something like surveillance footage that shows a key witness may have lied to the police. And not just any witness, an ATF agent. Could this be the clue that breaks the case wide open? We'll have the answer after the break. If you've been following the Karen Reed case like I have, every night I do a recap on my Drop Dead Serious podcast, so take a look. You may be forgiven if you feel like you are rewatching an old movie. But like any old movie rewatch, if you pay close enough attention, you actually pick up on things you missed the first time round. Or in Karen Reed's case, stuff that everybody missed the first time round. Take Brian Higgins, for example. He's an ATF agent with deep ties to the Canton police. He was at the house party where John O'Keefe was found frozen in the snow back in 2022. He also exchanged some pretty steamy text messages with John O'Keefe's girlfriend, Karen Reed, before John O'Keefe was killed. If you believe Karen's lawyers, he was part of a cover-up, that police officers at that party killed John O'Keefe and then staged him out on the lawn to make it look like Karen hit him with her SUV. And I get it, murder conspiracies involving police officers, it seems pretty far-fetched, except for the little piece of surveillance video in the trial that just opened a Pandora's box of WTF. The night that John O'Keefe died, Brian Higgins told investigators that he left the party and that he went to the Canton PD to help move some cars because of the big snowstorm that was coming. And he told them that he wasn't on his phone with anybody at 1:30 in the morning, that any calls must have been butt dials. So you can imagine the surprise in the courtroom when a clip of surveillance video was played showing Brian Higgins at the Canton PD on his phone in the dark of night. This is Karen's lawyer, Alan Jackson, grilling one of the lead investigators about that very issue.
If we can go ahead and play this. Stop. Do you recognize the person in this video?
It appears to be Mr. Brian Higgins.
Okay. Who did that appear to be walking away from the camera in this shot?
I'm not certain.
Does it appear to be the same person as Brian Higgins?
It does appear that way, yes.
Okay, if we go ahead and play this through. Pause. Does it appear from this video that the person has anything in his hand?
I really can't tell.
What do you see in that video?
It appears to be an individual wearing a black beanie hat, black dark colored sweatshirt with some design on it, and something illuminating by his face.
Usually when I have something illuminating by my face, it's actually a phone. It would really be great to get a look at the forensic records on Agent Brian Higgins' phone, to see who he was calling that late at night. But nobody can do that because Agent Brian Higgins ditched that phone and trashed the SIM card just after John's death. Curious, I know. And any data that the cops have from his phone came from Agent Brian Higgins himself, the honor system. As for the reason that he was in the hoodie, walking through the police station, he said he was there to move cars. But the video shows him walking around in hallways and doing something entirely different, as well as moving a mysterious bag from one vehicle over to his own car. It's a pretty snowy night. Very, very snowy night. One of the worst blizzards they'd ever had, but you can clearly see he wasn't moving cars. It looked like he had a big bag that he was moving into his car. So again, just very curious stuff. And if all of this looks new to you, me too. This didn't make it into the first trial. So what's in the bag? And what was Agent Higgins doing at the cop shop that night on his phone at 1:30 a.m.? Maybe this is the reason that prosecutors decided not to call him in their case in chief this time round. But that does not mean that Karen's lawyers won't call him. So I'd stay tuned on that one. Coming up next, if the camera doesn't lie, it also doesn't blink, even when it catches a shocking murder in full color and in real time. This young woman, a TikTok influencer, was live streaming to thousands of online fans, and she doesn't know it yet, but just in a few seconds, a man with a gun will end her young life in front of all her followers. And you know what? She's not the only online star murdered in cold blood in the last few days. The videos are next. Details too. Welcome back. You are about to see the last few seconds of a young woman's life. So when I warn you that you might want to look away, I really mean it. It is a murder that happened while the victim was live streaming on social media. I'm not going to show you the moment that she dies. I'm just going to show you the moments that lead up to it. And as if a murder like this couldn't get worse, it actually does. There were two murders like this, two beautiful young influencers apparently killed by hitmen. Tonight, police in both Mexico and Colombia are trying to solve both of the murders. Both victims, young women, 22 and 23 years old, who were both social media influencers with thousands of followers. Both victims were shot dead in the same week in broad daylight, reportedly by hitmen acting as delivery drivers. Maria Jose Estupiñán shared her daily life with more than 50,000 online fans. And witnesses say a man pretending to be a deliverer of something came to her house and shot her dead at her door last Thursday. This video was taken by a neighborhood security camera, and the authorities say it's the shooter running away from Maria Jose's house. In the second case, Valeria Marquez had more than 500,000 followers on Instagram. And last Tuesday, she was live on TikTok at the beauty salon where she worked, talking about a strange visitor who'd come to the beauty shop shortly before she got there, and suddenly someone appeared off camera and killed Valeria with 3 gunshots. There's no sound on this recording, it's just silent. The killer was reportedly wearing a mask, riding a motorcycle, and was helped by another man. Police say they don't have any leads, but that part of the country is fully controlled by a powerful and violent drug cartel. Maria's killing is unsolved so far as well, and we will be watching these cases. Still ahead tonight, no internet, no smartphone, not even a landline, but it still beats jail. The Tennessee woman charged with hiring a hitman to kill her ex-husband is sleeping in her own bed tonight. But for how long? Details after a break. The state calls it hiring a hitman who was really an undercover cop. The judge calls it, and I'm quoting here, a horribly misguided attempt to change her life in a perverse sort of way. That's interesting. The her in this case being Angie Solomon, who you may recall was caught on tape saying that she wanted her broadcaster ex-husband, quote, under the ground. Late last week, Angie posted bail in the amount of $250,000. But the money's only part of it. She'll be under house arrest up to and throughout her trial and forbidden to use the internet or communicate with the outside world in any way, shape, or form. The same judge who gave her a break and reduced her bail from $500,000 said she had no prior convictions and said if someone slips her a telephone, she's going right back to jail, end quote. Angie Solomon is expected in court again near the end of July. And yes, we will be following her case. Meantime, thanks so much for watching, everyone. Make sure you go ahead to Drop Dead Serious. Go check out my podcast, either on your podcast platform or on the YouTube. Got the QR code right there, but it's easy to find on the Google. Thanks for being here. Cuomo's next.